Hi, I thought I'd do a video to show how I go about embroidering the face on the Annie doll. I've got some ready embroidered faces here if I hold these up. So as you can see, it's one of the first jobs that I do. Before I begin the construction of the doll and sewing it together on the machine, I embroider the face right at the very beginning. If you're more comfortable embroidering the face on at the end as one of the finishing sort of steps making the doll, by all means stick to that. I experimented with a few different ways, and for me I found this to be the most convenient way of doing it. So there are two main designs in the pattern, these two here. If I flip to the last page in the pattern booklet, you'll see these are the two main designs, but you can mix and match these, pop the cheeks onto this design, or just use this as a guide to create your own design entirely. It's whatever you'd like to do. So I'll go back to that in a little bit, but first of all, here's the template for the face. Now, because the template isn't symmetrical, it's marked with a correct way up for marking out. There's a few templates that aren't symmetrical, so need to be a certain way up for marking out. Otherwise, they won't all work together properly for the finished doll. So with this template this way up, I don't know if you can see, I'll just hold that up. I invert the notches on my templates. So cut them in this way, and then when I'm marking out, I find it easy then, I just hold that up, to then just mark on the seam allowance, just make little marks to show, there we go, where the notches would be. I find this easier than making little clips into the seam allowance or trying to awkwardly cut the little points the other way. For me, this is the most convenient way of doing it, so I don't know whether you would find that helpful too. So the template is this way up for the face, but also behind the face to support it is some interfacing. And that just means that it gives the face a nice smooth finish, but it stiffens the fabric so that when I'm embroidering, there's less chance of the stitches pulling at the fabric and just creating little gathers and puckers. The interfacing helps to give it a much smoother, neater finish. So the interfacing also needs to be cut a certain way. If I just hold this up, I don't know whether you can see, there's a smooth, dull side, and then this side has dimples on it. And can you see it's slightly shiny because of the glue? So we want that side down. We want the dull, smooth side up for marking out. And again, template that way up, mark it out, and cut the interfacing out so that it will fit over the reverse of the face like this. Right, so if I move these out of the way and just get my pressing mat, I'm going to press the interfacing in place, so it's definitely glue side down. So I position that over there, and with a medium iron and a damp pressing cloth, just put the damp pressing cloth over the top and hold the iron on for 8 seconds. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I'll just move it over a little bit to catch this side. There we go, hopefully that's stuck. Oh no, not quite, so I'll just give it a little bit longer. Try not to swirl the iron about like that because it might make the interfacing move. So hopefully this is well stuck down now. Yes, there we go. So I'll move these out of the way, get rid of the iron. Now, the reason I put the interfacing on before marking out the facial features is I don't want the iron to set the pen. I've used a water erasable pen, this one here, and I just don't want to take the chance that the iron could set that in position, the heat of the iron could set that. So I've added the interfacing before I then transfer the markings for the face. And then there's a little bit, I don't know if you can see, the interfacing overlaps a little bit, so I'm just going to trim it so that it exactly fits the face piece. Okay, that's nice and neat now. Get rid of these bits. Okay, so I'll go back to the pattern. So the last page in the pattern booklet is the embroidery templates. And so the face piece, just line it up with the outline and trace through. I've made sure that the last page of the pattern is blank so that you can hold it up to a light if needs be. If you can't quite see the features through the fabric, Just hold it up to a window or a light box and you'll be able to trace through. I'll move this here. Actually, I think I'm going to go for this face, so I can see the outline through. So I'm just going to follow this with my water erasable pen and just mark out the facial features. Little mouth. There we go. I might even, to spice it up a little bit, I might add cheeks into this one as well. So I'll slide it up to this one and just trace around the cheeks as well. There we go. So I'll move the pattern booklet out of the way now, and I'm ready to begin embroidering the face. The Annie kit comes with black and pink embroidery thread, a skein of each. I'm going to start with the black thread. The thread is a 6-strand thickness, and I want to use the full 6-strand thickness for my embroidery. But when that bends through the eye of a needle, at the fold at the eye of the needle, it will be 12 strands thick. And that's just, it can be a little bit too thick and it can pull a larger hole into the fabric. So what I'm going to do is just divide the thread in half. So I'm going to separate it into 2 lots of 3 strands. You see that there? So I'm just going to divide these sections up, and I'm just going to use half, but then double it over with my thread. This never goes smoothly, especially whilst I'm videoing it. There we go. So I have here a 3-strand thickness piece. So I'm going to thread my embroidery needle. So now there's only the 6-strand thickness at the eye of the needle going through the fabric. So I'm going to double it over and knot the end. There we go, let's smooth out. And then I'm just going to tie a knot in the end of the thread, like this. There we go. Just going to leave a little tail, but I'll trim off, there we go, most of the excess. Now I'm going to begin, get rid of that bit, I'm going to begin with an eye, and I'm just going to backstitch a circle. Backstitch a circle, the outline of the eye, and then fill it in. I'm going to continue on all the way around the eye. It's making quite small stitches. I would say maybe 3 millimeters in length, sort of 1/8 of an inch, that sort of size, maybe a little bit bigger. So all around the outline of the eye. And then in a minute, I'm just going to fill in the centre of the eye with long, straight satin stitches. So 2 more stitches should do this. That stitch has twisted a little bit, so with the eye of the needle end, I'm just going to gently ease the stitch up and then just gently bring it back into position. There we go. So that's the outline of the eye done, and now I'm just going to fill in long straight stitches, taking care not to split the stitches that I've already made on the outside. There's one. There we go. And then one last stitch should do it, and then that's the eye complete. There we go. And now I'm going to move up and sew the eyelashes over the top. When you're doing these, don't go straight across to the other eye, because if I hold it up like this, if you go straight across to stitch the next eye, when the doll's finished, you may well see the thread, you see the shadow of the thread across the face. So when you've done an eye, finish the thread off at that eye and then start again for the next one. But because the eyelashes are very close by, I'm just going to go straight up to do the eyelash area now. And this is back stitched again. Just following the pen lines. And if any of the stitches do look twisted or are not lying quite the way you want, just again with the back of the needle, just ease them up very gently and then ease them down into place again. Don't pull too tightly on the stitches, because you will then get some sort of puckering, creasing on the face. But the interfacing does help just to support it whilst you're doing this embroidery. So I'm going to go all the way round and sew. That one's got a little bit twisted. I'm not really happy with that one. There we go. That sits much more neatly now. And if I do feel you've pulled on it a little bit tightly, again, just loosen the stitch and resettle it. You can at the end as well, through a cloth, give the face a little press once you've finished doing the stitches. There we go. Just got one last stitch here. Then I'm on to the last eyelash, and then I'll show how I would finish the thread. There we go. So that's the eye done. And then if I flip it over to this side, to finish the thread, what I do very carefully, because you don't want to damage the threads, the stitches that are there, but just I feed my needle through the backs of the stitches, and then before this loop closes up, I will just feed my thread through it and just make it into a little knot, and then just very carefully just feed the thread through the backs of those stitches just to hold it in place. There we go. And then trim away the excess thread. So that's one eye done, and I'll move on and do the cheek. And the cheek is in exactly the same way. So I have the pink thread here, and again I want to divide it in two. It's probably the fiddliest part really of dividing the thread. There we go. So same as before, double it over and knot the ends. Because the cheeks are a circle, you can start anywhere, and then when you finish it, just by finishing where you started, it will secure the first stitch. If I was doing a straight line of stitching, so for example the smile, I'll show this one, the smile on this one, I would start at the second stitch and then back stitch over the first one and then carry on, just so the stitches are catching down the start point. I'll show that in a little bit, just I'm not sure I explained that really well, so I'll go back to that. But again, this is just the same way as the eye really, it's just the same principle, just back stitch a circle. There we go. So I'll come back in a moment when that circle's completed. So there we have this cheek finished and this eye. So I'll move on to the mouth now. The mouth is done slightly differently. I don't back stitch around the outline and then infill with the lips on this one. I've threaded up my needle already. So again, 3 strands doubled over to make 6. And now with this, I'm going to start in the centre, and this is just satin stitch throughout, so there's no outline. But I do some guide stitches first. So I'll do the centre of the mouth, that, and then at these points here, just vertical stitches, and then I'll do one here as well. And then I use these to work from and just fill in with satin stitches all this area. I think I can do a couple more on the outside of the mouth here. There's one more. And just putting these marker stitches, I just find makes it easier to keep the stitches vertical. They don't end up sort of lopsided, falling over to one side. So we want these stitches to lie flat, but don't pull them too tightly to distort the fabric. I think probably fit 2 in here. There we go, so that's part of the mouth done. I'll just finish into the centre, and then to speed things up, I'll finish the rest and come back. There we go. So nice and close together. They give a nice bit of texture to the face as well, and they're slightly raised. There we go. So that's one half of the mouth done. I'll come back in a moment and I'll have the other half done. So that's the mouth complete there with all those satin stitches. And the next job, I'm just going to back stitch a smile in black through the mouth. So again, I've doubled over, 3 strand thickness, doubled over to give us 6 strand thickness embroidery thread. And this is what I was trying to describe before, possibly unsuccessfully. This is a line that goes from side to side, unlike a circle, which starts and it finishes at the first stitch, and that last stitch helps to secure the first one. With this, instead of starting right at the end, there, at the end of the smile, I'm going to start a stitch within, there like this, and then go back and do the stitch at the end, Just going to ease that stitch up because it's a little bit twisted. And again. There we go. So this second stitch now will meet the first one and just help to secure that first stitch. The knot does most of the work, but this just helps to add a little bit of extra security. So there we go, that second stitch there. Make sure it's nice and neat, yep. And now we can't see the line through the mouth now because of these stitches, so this bit has to be done by eye really. But just very gently bring the needle up in between the pink stitches. Try to sort of find a way in between the strands of thread rather than through one, just to not risk breaking any of the threads. There we go. Just going to turn it over and make sure it's nice and neat on the back. Yeah, that's okay. Ease that up. This thread's been a little bit twisty. There we go. Check it's okay on the back. Gently stitch through the mouth. Yep. It's a little bit knotted. Again, this thread has been really twisty. So ease that up and then just gently bring it into position. And then the very last stitch, it's nice and neat on the back. And again, it looks fine on the front. So to just settle the stitches, I'm just going to bring my needle under those stitches there. Careful not to sort of damage any threads. As before the loop closes, feed the needle through, bring it into a knot. Do not pull this too tightly, otherwise it will affect the front. And then just gently feed. I just feed the excess thread through the back of the stitches like this, just to keep it nice and neat. Just pop one back the other way. And then trim away the excess. There we go, she's got a lovely little smile on one side of face. So I'll come back in a minute and I'll just finish this side of the face. So there we go, all finished. So hopefully you can see that there are some options, even with the two designs in the book, to mix and match eyelashes or eyebrows, whether to put cheeks in or not. Yeah, there's lots of things you can do, or you could do your own thing entirely. But I hope that was helpful. Thanks.